Yeah, here we go. We are recording. How was your day?
My day was wonderful. It's
Wonderful.
sunny this
Nice.
evening, and I'm getting ready to take my dog for a walk.
Class. I'm actually looking forward to a walk. I have a lovely little kind of nature trail just behind the back of the house, so really looking forward to that. That's kind of a daily ritual that I have
Nice.
recently. So it's good to have those little things. What was your
Yeah.
dog's name? Is your dog's name Elvis?
Yes, because he's a hound
Class.
dog.
Class. I love Elvis. That is absolutely deadly. I think I actually remember you see or putting it up in one of your stories or something like that, and I was like, Elvis,
Yes.
that is such a cool name for a dog.
Yes. Yeah. You'll see him
Does
later on in my stories as well.
does he sound like Elvis when he howls?
No.
No, they never do. Um, so disclaimer, I think it's just best that we mention up front. This is our second take at this because first time we had a little bit of technical difficulties. It didn't necessarily go our way. So second time's a charm.
And that's on
Um,
me.
there's not a problem. Listen, I have teething problems. I'm still learning the ropes in regards to this all new technology. Listen, it's recording. I don't even care. This
Yes.
is my life.
Beautiful.
This is my kind of like whatever you want to call it, kind of my ring light, so to speak. So not to say it's an upgrade, it's probably a downgrade for a lot of people. But listen, we work and it's behind the scenes, so nobody has to know. Nobody has to know.
Yeah.
Um, so Deadly, thank you very much for coming on board with me a second time. I really do appreciate it. So initially, the reason that I wanted to speak with you in the first place was I was doing a particular series last month in the month of April. God, that's a month ago already. My God, where April was dubbed Stress Awareness Month,
Mhm.
and each Friday I had an opportunity on my page for people to kind of input their stresses that they were experiencing throughout the week. So what I found, I have to come back over the results again, is a lot of the stresses that people are experiencing are within the workplace
Mhm.
and around financial situations. Now, having a little bit more time reflecting back from our first conversation, I think it's quite obvious as to why that would be. Obviously, cost of living has gone up exponentially. Everybody's feeling the pinch. Um, but more importantly, regardless of what the facts are, how are kind of or what are some simple ways that people can actually manage their stress? So we'll get more kind of specific in relation to what causes stress in a couple of minutes if we need to, but like just to keep it kind of in layman's terms, if somebody is experiencing stress, what is maybe a couple of tips that you can advise to relinquish that stress or to help better deal with that stress?
Yeah. So, I mean, stress lives in the body. So, I mean, some kind of form of movement is always helpful to shake out the cortisol, which is the stress hormone that builds up in your body. So some form of movement. It doesn't have to be CrossFit and really aggressive or really
Yeah.
high standard. It can literally be walking, moving, some form of movement. If you can break a sweat, that's really good. If you can continue to talk while breaking the sweat, that's even better. So I mean, it's roughly zone two cardio. Very good. That's helpful. Another is, I mean, I have a journal in front of me. You'll see pictures upside down, but I mean, I journal often about some of the stuff that's on my mind. And often I think some of the things that stress us out is not just what's happening to us, but it's the story we tell about what's happening to us. So, for example, if I have an opportunity to speak in front of a group of 300 people, the story I could tell about that is that's extremely scary and stressful building up to it, versus another story I could tell about it is what an exciting adventure, what an amazing opportunity. So the story or the experience of that same stress is very different depending on the story we tell about these things.
Mm,
The other thing that causes stress, and again, just to pay attention to, is the expectations of us, other people, and how the world should be. And typically, stress is experienced or suffering is experienced when our expectations are higher than reality could ever be. So, let me give you an example. An expectation that will cause stress is I should always be happy. I should never make mistakes. I should never disappoint anyone. And there should be never any traffic in the way when I'm in a rush. Right? Those expectations, those stories are going to increase suffering and increase stress because reality will never meet that, ever.
mm, mm.
But we never examine or take the time to explore those expectations or beliefs that we have about how the world, us, and other people should be. And just brainstorming them, getting them
Yeah.
out of your head and onto paper creates clarity, allows the mind and body to settle a little bit and go, do you know what? I'm never going to hit that. Why am I holding myself to that unbelievably unrealistic standard or
Mm.
expectation? I mean, there's a couple of simple things. I mean, stress lives in the body. So, I mean, typically it's connection is really helpful. So typically when we experience stress, we think we're the only one that experiences stress and we're the one that's not good enough. So some form of connection or conversation, even like what we're having. Oh, you're stressed out about traffic when you're late. Oh, I feel exactly the same thing. So we've automatically reduced the shame of this is just me that experiences this thing. That's
Yeah.
really helpful. Learning something new. Typically, when you're stressed, you don't want to hear somebody say learning something, but some way of feeling like you're growing and expanding into the world a little bit more, that feels good and it helps us experience a little bit of useful stress rather than just the day-to-day stress. Some form of movement, some form of just grounding in the presence of stress. I mean, I was asked yesterday in a conversation similar to this, where does fear live? Let's change the word fear to where does
Interesting.
stress live? Yeah, I mean, super question, right?
Yeah.
And stress is experienced in the present, but it's typically about things that are going on in the future or the expectation or placing on how the moment in front of us should be. So again, like an example, I was late home this evening to take this call, right? So
Yeah.
I was a
Yeah.
little bit stressed.
Hmm.
I can notice the sensation of stress. So I was probably getting a little bit of sweaty palms. I'm thinking, how am I going to get to Dean from the car when I can only contact him on Instagram or email? And I can't do
Yeah.
either of them from the car. So it's
Hmm.
stressful, right? I have an
Yeah.
expectation of how I should be. The reality is different. And sometimes it's just softening that expectation and saying, what is possible right now? What's in my control? Start
Yeah.
from there, not the stuff. We can never change the world. We can only ever change our response to it and the next action in front of us.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, maybe let
Sorry,
me
Phil.
pause
Just
there.
I was just going to actually say, like, I can absolutely relate to the stress in regards to, and I want to actually maybe talk about this specifically, is not necessarily road rage, but when you're kind of feeling entrapped within a
Yes.
small box. Now,
Yep.
don't get me wrong, like I used to be an absolute bollocks for road rage. I would be the first person to be sticking the fingers up out the window. I
Yep.
like embarrassingly, but it got to me. Now I just kind of it's a lot more kind of water off a duck's back. Like
Mm.
something somebody said to me recently in regards to when we were always kind of caught in traffic because we commute quite a lot. And it was like, there's no point two dickheads being on the road. And that might sound so kind of
Yeah.
one flippant and two easy. But when I thought about it, it makes perfect sense because it actually made me kind of internalize and go, okay, there's actually, you know, you're not thinking rationally when you're stressed, especially in that kind of high stress environment, whether it be, doing 120 kilometers down a
Mhm.
motorway type of thing, and you got vans and lorries and everything flashing you to get out of the way because they want to just get home even quicker than you.
Mhm.
Either it's going to be what 30 seconds extra, but yeah, there was always something that I was intrigued about. That why is it that people experience or seem to experience stress on a magnified scale when they're kind of closed in? Like realistically speaking, again, I don't want to kind of hone in on the kind of stress within the car situation,
Mhm.
but if somebody was to be like absolutely just speeding up behind you, flashing the lights or whatever, it's going to cause you stress and anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, where I was actually going to go somewhere with that. Sorry, I actually lost my train of thought.
No,
Apologies.
but I mean, it's perfect. So again, in a confined space, why do we
Yeah,
experience heightened stress as a response?
yeah, perfect. Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, there's lots of responses to that question. I mean, it's a great question, right? So
Yeah.
why is because so more or less a stress response is a sympathetic nervous system response. That's a survival, fight, flight, freeze response. So that's a mobilizing energy. So we either want to expel the energy through hitting someone or running from the stressor. So again, this is unconscious. This is in our body. This response happens to something that we perceive through our senses.
Hmm.
So the filter we have is people shouldn't be driving up my arse, flashing at me to go faster. So that's a filter that tells my body when somebody does that, we're ready to fight.
I think that maybe goes back to what you touched on, which was the expectation. We have expectations of certain people to behave a certain
Yes,
way. But then somebody said to me before, the worst thing we can do is assume that other people think the way we do, because we
exactly.
have that certain expectation. And again, when
Exactly.
those expectations aren't met, that's when people lose their shit.
Exactly.
In my kind of experience.
And nobody thinks like you.
Mm,
Nobody thinks like me.
mm-hmm.
Nobody knows how you think until you get to share it in conversation. And that's never going to happen when somebody's on a motorway behind you,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So expectation of how people should be, the reality is different to that expectation. So we call suffering, let's call it stress.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that comes about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If we change the filter or the belief or the story and just experience what's happening rather than labeling or judging it good or bad, well, then we just experience someone up our bum in the car
Mm-hmm.
as a thing. And then we just go, oh, I'll choose my response. It's to move out of the way and wish that person a great day.
Absolutely. Yeah, kill them
Right?
with kindness. Yeah.
100%, because then we choose our emotional response rather than giving it outside of us to somebody else. And
Yeah.
so often people say, oh, they make me so angry. No, 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 no. You create your emotional response to the world. We give away all our power for how we feel. And I mean, that's going to trigger people, Dean. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on my ability to be able to control or at least manage my own response
Mm-hmm.
emotionally.
Yeah.
But it's much easier to blame somebody else because we've never been taught how to regulate our emotions. So if we don't have the skill set, it's easier to put the control or blame out there rather than ever taking it in here and
Mm-hmm.
us taking ownership and responsibility.
Yeah.
My invitation to people is do not give your happiness away to somebody out there that can press a button that says happy if it goes like this, unhappy if it goes like that.
Yeah.
Define happiness for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm happy when I walk Elvis, my dog.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy when I can drink a glass of, I mean, in this case, it's blackcurrant, inside under a roof,
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than I'm happy when nobody gets in my way when I'm late.
Mm.
I can Instagram from the car and I won't get fined. Like that's horseshit.
Yeah.
Reality is never going to hit that. So you will only ever suffer and you'll only ever stress. But
Yeah.
let's go back to the stress response, survival response. There's a mobilizing energy. And typically what happens is we don't ever discharge that energy. So it just builds up in our bodies. Again,
Mm-hmm.
this is why movement or some form of literally shaking the cortisol buildup in our bodies. This is why you get runner's high. This is why you get like the elation after a good workout. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a free state because we've removed the residue of stress.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. And like I can actually relate to that quite recently because I recently ran my first 10K. And for me that's a big deal because
Yeah,
distance,
congratulations.
thank you very much, but distance running is not something I have ever kind of applied myself towards. And like my form of exercise would typically be in the gym lifting weights. That's just what I enjoy.
Mhm.
And I think after a while, you start to kind of become used to that. You know, you don't get that kind of elated feelings as much as you would have in the start. Now, don't get me wrong, I still feel great after a workout, and it's my number one prescription for a bad
Mhm.
mood. It really, really is. But I just found a different modality in the form of running. It was absolutely amazing. Now, again, just going back to what we were talking about, I have this absolutely beautiful kind of forest trail. It's 2.5 kilometers loop. And just the fact that there's trees, you're out in nature, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone because
Mhm.
a lot of people say go out in nature, a lot of people say exercise. When you can combine the two and even
Mm.
maybe more than two, I just feel like the results are magnified even more. So I can absolutely attest to that.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, let me tell you again why nature is really healing for us, right? So
Mm,
put yourself in a car, sympathetic response, as in survival response, because somebody is driving aggressively behind you. You
mhm,
fight, flight, freeze, energy running through your system. Let's call it cortisol, but it's sympathetic nervous system. So threat response is high. You're typically going to experience more anger, frustration, anxiety, doubt, depression, fear, all this kind of stuff, right? Now let's move it to parasympathetic activity. This is why my business is called Vitamin P Coaching. For physiology, can we manage and regulate our physiology, our body's response? In nature, in forests, let's give it an example. Our parasympathetic nervous system can switch on, so we're more likely to rest and digest, because the threat response, we can see threat from a distance. So it can lower sympathetic activity. So the stress response can lower, and we automatically free up space to rest and digest.
What
And
you're
that's
talking about, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go on.
What you're talking about actually reminds me of a book, and maybe you're going to be able to have to help me out with this one. I think it's something along the lines of why zebras don't get.
Why zebras don't get ulcers? Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah, absolutely. So I haven't actually read it. It's definitely on the to read list, but I'm aware of that it does go quite deep into the whole
Yep.
parasympathetic system versus the sympathetic system.
Yes.
So just on that, in layman's terms, can you just quickly kind of break down what each of those means for people who might not understand what that is?
So let's talk about zebras and
Okay.
why they don't get ulcers, right? So let's use the
Sure.
book. My cat might appear, so just if you see her on a tail, it's expected. It's not a
Oh, I
rogue
kicked my
animal
cat out. He
walking
was
through.
literally just jumping up everywhere. So listen, it's all good.
So sympathetic activity, a zebra is walking in the African plains. A lion comes along, and the threat response to the zebra's life is, I could die. Am I big enough to fight this lion? No, because it's not a cub. I must run. Or I could play dead. And literally, I mean, I could send you video links to YouTube to watch this reaction. It is profound, right? So under that threat, massive amounts of cortisol to mobilize the system to either act or freeze. Freeze response is playing dead. To a lion, they do not want to eat dead meat because it could be rotten and they won't survive. So fight, flight, freeze response, really helpful in the wild. Let's say the lion does not attack the zebra. Remember I said you get a peak of cortisol and we never resolve or get rid of that residue. What zebras do to come out of that sympathetic survival threat response state is they will violently shake. And you can Google this on YouTube. It's wild. Violently shake and then do a number of extremely big breaths. And when I say big breaths, people typically think an inhale. They do a big inhale, but they do an equally big exhale. So inhale is a sympathetic response. Exhale is a parasympathetic response. So if you think of an accelerator to mobilizing threat response is the inhale, exhale is the decelerator or the brake. So they've mobilized sympathetic stress threat response, and then they've decelerated. They've done the breath to regulate the body's response. And if you have same inhale with breathing to exhale, you develop what's called a coherent state. And I have a video recorded on this. Like, again, Dean, I want you and your community to win, right? I have a heart monitor here, and you can hook this up to your ear, and I can show you. This is zebra in threat response. Watch what happens when I breathe and regulate my breathing. And all I've done is regulate breathing. I haven't moved. I haven't learned something. I haven't been active. I haven't noticed anything. I've been grounded in the moment. I haven't given. Again, they're just some of the components of well-being. All I've done is control. Same inhale, same exhale. So I'm regulating my nervous system, sympathetic to parasympathetic. I'm telling my body it's safe. Threat response is over. So in the car, let's do the same thing. Your body experiences the same thing as a threat to its life. So that person up your bum in the car, threat to life. Sympathetic activity, we then continue to sit in traffic and our world narrows because we're in threat. We get more angry, frustrated, depressed. Why am I here? Why do I sit in traffic? All this kind of stuff. We default to negative because that's going to keep you alive. One antidote is just regulate your breathing. Be grateful for something that's going on. I ring people I love from the car. So I've turned sitting in traffic as a so frustrating to I get to speak to my loved ones and people that give me energy and that I want to share some of the good stuff that's going on. So it totally changed my experience of the same thing. And sometimes all I do is focus on my breathing. Sounds too simple. Sounds too simple, but it's profound in its impact.
I can absolutely 100% agree with you because one of my daily morning rituals before I actually kind of hop on that commute is coherent breathing. So there's a couple of videos on YouTube that I will literally just maybe sit for 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending
Beautiful.
on how much I procrastinate about going to work and how much time I've left.
Yes.
And it is really, really kind of, I'm not going to say life changing, but it changes your day. It really, really does, because there was a time there I kind of fell out of the habit of doing my breath work, and it's noticeable. It really, really is. And again, you just said to the point, it's so simple. And a lot of people will probably just agree with that and say, nah, there's nothing to it. It's too simple. Try it. That's what I would just love to say to people. Absolutely try it. So yeah, like I think just being able to regulate your breathing and just be more a little bit present again. And you touched
Dean,
on something there. Sorry, go ahead.
do you want to show your audience? I have my sensor here. We can hook it up to Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Give me 1 second. So it's gonna look a bit weird if people are watching, right? So this is
Cool.
just a heart sensor. I bought this just to be able to show people the value of this, right? So it looks a bit weird. It's literally just so I can do this. So just give me a second. Okay, I'm gonna join Zoom. I love this stuff, and I wanted data. So you'll see me joining. Don't worry about this. No audio. Stay participant. Okay, I'm gonna make myself a host. Because again, we can talk about the stuff, or I can show you. Literally, here's my heart.
Really? This is absolutely amazing. I'm so interested. Go with it. I'm here to enjoy it.
This is profound. It makes me so happy, right?
Boys
So
and their toys.
yeah, because I mean, here's the start broadcast. So this should start in a second. Yes. Okay.
Wow.
So here's my heart. So see heart rate variability in the middle. So this is a measure of my sympathetic to parasympathetic activity. So the variability between those two. The higher the number, the better. You see my coherence score at the top and the middle is 2.
Yep.
Now it's lower. Watch, and then you see in this app, it shows me how to breathe on the top. So it's breathe in, now it's breathe in.
I'm with you.
And now it'll show me breathe out. So just watch. All I will do is follow the breathing and just watch the heart rate variability change in the middle. So it's a little bit chaotic right now. So this is a threat response because I'm being recorded. I want this to go well for Dean, all that kind of stuff. Let me turn off the video as well, just a second. Oh, I can't. That's okay. So just watch. All I will do is the coherent breathing. Watch the chaos turn to what's called a coherent signal. So it'll be a really smooth graph like this, a sine wave, like a really good piece of music. Just watch.
Cool.
And you can follow along if you're watching. Dean, you do this as well. So now I'm exhaling. Now I'm going to inhale. We're at 122. So watch 30 seconds. Roughly 30 seconds, right? Watch this. So if you want data, look at that heart rate variability difference.
That's class. And it's so quick as well, as in like
So
how
quick.
quick you're able to regulate. That's absolutely amazing. There we go. What I was saying is I'm surprised at how quick that actually that you're able to kind of regulate. Am I right in saying that? Is that what's happening? You're able to regulate. So when I say regulate, what is being regulated? Is it your heart rate? What's going on there?
So that's me telling my nervous system that I'm safe.
Okay.
And when my nervous system feels safe, my body is safe, my emotional range will increase, it'll become more positive. My thoughts will widen, they'll be kinder, they'll be less narrow and constricted. And I'm more likely to act in a way that's intentional, how I choose, rather than reactive, how I expect to be, or just be embodied anger or any of this kind of stuff. It's just not a useful pattern. I can be more intentional. How do I actually want to be in the world? That's what's regulated right there. You saw it with the
Awesome.
data.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's class. And if anybody's watching, like this is literally the proof is in the pudding. You know, and again, I love the way everybody just kind of flips it off and says, "Oh, look, it's so simple. Something that's so simple can't work." It absolutely does. And as I said, just going back to the point, just try it. You know, it's an absolute game changer. It is for me anyway. It might not be a particular modality that works for somebody else, but absolutely, I think it's great. Going back to something that you did say, you mentioned connection in
Mm.
regards to helping alleviate the symptoms of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not here just to blow smoke up your ass, but I'm going to absolutely agree because, again, this is something that I can relate to quite recently. Somebody reached out to me within the last couple of days with a simple question: "Hey, bud, how are you?" And to be quite honest with you, I was having a couple of shitty days.
Mm.
I was probably stressed,
Mm-hmm.
letting my emotions get the better of me, not maybe doing the daily habits that would have helped me regulate myself. But regardless of all the things that I wasn't doing, the response that this person gave me was simple as, "Look, we all have shitty days, mate." And just, again, that kind of human connection to know I'm not on my own. I'm not the only one that experiences stress. And again,
Yes.
going back to the point, it sounds so simple, but just, I don't know if it's a psychological thing to have somebody relate to us. It really, really does kind of just help the situation. That's the best way I can put it.
But you
Um,
also heard there, Dean, somebody say your expectation of never having shitty days is not the reality. It's okay to have shitty days and good days. So it gives you permission to feel what you feel.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
and
no judgment or shame. Like
yeah,
I'm not good enough.
that's something I typically struggle with, which is obviously I'm running this mental fitness page to promote, you know, positivity and positive mindsets, and I feel sometimes like a little bit of a phony if I am to have a bad day,
Yes, same.
which is completely wrong and irrational.
Yeah,
But
but same.
I probably suffer, or not suffer, I probably punish myself a lot more on that particular topic than I need to.
Mhm.
But again, it's just part of the full spectrum of experiencing human emotions, really.
So can I bounce back to this?
Yeah.
So you not allowing yourself to feel the flow of good and bad is saying to other people, even though you're trying to move them towards positive,
Mm,
you're saying when you feel negative, that's not good. Instead, if we just accept when I get negative, here's what I do to create fitness for myself to move back to a wider spectrum of emotions that includes both negative and positive.
mhm,
Do you see what I mean? So the negative doesn't have to capture you because you have the fitness, which is just a skill set in motion often, to widen your perspective. And we've shown you with the breathing. Here's a simple way to tell your body it's okay. Then we go to emotions. What am I feeling? I'm feeling anger. What's causing anger? Oh, well, I have a expectation of how I should be and I'm not meeting it. Okay, cool. What are you going to do about it?
mhm.
So what's the movement? So energy, or sorry, emotions are emotion, energy and motion. All emotions are signal for some movement. When we get stuck in the emotion because we judge it as bad, so we judge us as bad, we get stuck in the emotion. I'm coaching somebody, I've coached them for the last 6 years, running a multi-billion dollar business. And one of the conversations we had a couple of months ago, they said, how do I get rid of anger? And I said, because your expectation is I should not experience anger, when it shows up, you add so much resistance to anger, it is only ever going to increase. Just accept it's going to be there.
Yeah,
And then when it
yeah,
shows up, it's there. okay, what's it telling me? And then I just act.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Like,
it.
yeah, and it's going back to one of these things. I wish in the time I could have practiced what I preach. But what I would say to somebody in that situation is just try to be a little bit more mindful and be a little bit more living in the present. Like I know I'm not going to go into the specific examples, but I know I was worrying about the future,
Yep.
which isn't in the present. And I know why a lot
Yes.
of people maybe feel sadness or depression is because maybe they're ruminating about the past.
Yes.
So I think it's super important to be able to, well, one, be able to regulate yourself, but two, just remind yourself of the present moment. And that's absolutely something that has helped me regulate my stress and maybe anger symptoms a lot more than I would have been able to handle maybe years ago when I didn't have control of my emotions.
Yes. And again, it's the things out there have control over our emotions. How might we bring that back in? One is just accept it. Then it's get curious about the emotion rather than judgmental of the emotion. Then it's what's the movement this is inviting me? Anger is away from something, joy is towards something. Frustration is away from, but it's also towards a brighter future. You can see something different or better that you want. How might I move towards that? What's the action? What's in my control? I mean, then you channel, you move with life rather than resisting it.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah,
powerful, so
absolutely.
simple.
Yeah. Before we actually start wrapping up, Philip, I would like to ask your opinion on go back to the topic of stress. There's obviously bad stress, but there is an element of good stress, I believe, that allows us to bring action to the maybe issues that we're facing that's causing us stress. So, for example, you know that analogy, what is it? The crab that outgrows its shell. Just maybe you can finish that one for me. But like, it's again, stress is useful in certain ways.
Mhm.
Is there any kind of examples that you could maybe give us that stress is useful? So when somebody kind of recognizes it, they can turn that negative into a positive.
Yeah, I mean, when you are not experiencing stress for long enough, you get bored, right?
Wow.
So,
Okay.
but
That's
but
powerful.
but true story. So,
Yeah.
Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I had to practice saying his name a lot. More or less, challenge meets skill on a graph and flow is in the middle. It's a linear relationship. And look up the research. I mean, there's lots of research on this exact thing, right? Challenge, if there was no challenge, but you were very skilled. So let's give it an example. You're a soccer player and the team that you're playing against is awful. It's boring. Let's increase the rate of how good they are. You're going to feel a little bit more stretched because it's stress,
Hmm.
because it's stretching your capability. It's asking more of your skill. Again, typically, stress is not negative. It's our perception of stress, the story we tell about it, and our body's response. And we typically aren't taught how to regulate the stress response. We've talked about breathing, we've talked about movement. There's some ways that are really simple to move with the emotion of stress. But again, so there's a stress and then there must be a recovery. There must be a balance. And so it's just noticing I'm feeling a little bit too much stress. How might I rest? How might I actively recover right now? How might I balance the stress with recovery? What is it? I say to people, you're never overworked, you're under recovered.
Very
So
good.
let's change it. You're never overstressed, you're under recovered.
Mm. Yeah, that's actually a really good kind of change example of being able to change your perspective and changing that negative into a positive. That's amazing. That's cool. Um, yeah, that was all I had for you this time around, Philip.
Awesome.
I'm happy with what we have here. Again, the whole reason for this was to revisit the idea around stress and hopefully put out some content, short clips that people will be able to relate to. And I definitely know for a fact there is a couple of topics here that I'm going to be able to dissect, digest, and be able to put up that one or two people have actually reached out to me about. I'm just going to leave it at that, and I think this is actually going to really help those particular individuals who were really looking forward to talking or listening to the talk that I had with yourself on that particular topic.
And maybe just to say, I mean, I experience all of the same things that people have probably brought to you.
Yeah.
I promise you, if you feel the human experience of both yin and yang, bright and dark, positive and negative emotions, you're not on your own.
Mhm.
It's part of the human experience, but typically if it's negative, we judge it as bad, so us as bad. You are not bad for experiencing anger, shame, frustration, depression, lostness, uncertainty, fear, any of that stuff. You're human, and that's okay. Welcome to the club. I promise you're in good company. And I mean, Dean, just to say to you as well, much love for what you're doing. Keep going. People
Absolutely,
need
brother.
you. But we
Appreciate
must
it.
but start with self-acceptance of when those emotions show up, so that then we give people permission to feel what they feel and then move with it.
Yeah,
Really
absolutely.
powerful.
But by no means do I have it figured out. This is absolutely a learning curve for me.
Same.
Yeah.
Forever.
So I don't think there's anybody who can actually say with confidence that they have it all figured out. So
They
look,
don't.
it's all trial and error. Philip, where can people find you if they're looking for you?
Just Vitamin P Coaching on Instagram and LinkedIn, Philip Brady. And again, if people are happy to talk, I'm happy to talk too.
Sweet. I'm happy to just put up a couple of clips of our conversation. I'm going to tag you in them. And again, if people want to get in touch, I absolutely would recommend it. Philip, you're an absolute gent, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate the conversation as always, and I hope to do it again in the future. And
Look
just
forward to
whenever we
it.
stop recording here, I'm just going to send you another wee message just to confirm everything.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dean.
Sweet man, appreciate it. Have a good weekend. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See you, mate.